Don't skip. Your soulmate secretly defended you in front of everyone. Don't skip. Listen carefully. This message is for you, because something happened recently that your soulmate never planned for. It wasn't on their schedule. It wasn't something they expected to experience. It wasn't even a situation they imagined they would become part of. Yet somehow, life quietly guided them into a conversation that would stay in their heart far longer than they ever expected. And listen to this. The day began like any other. Nothing felt unusual. People were talking, sharing opinions, laughing, discussing everyday situations. The atmosphere felt ordinary, comfortable, relaxed. No one imagined that within a few moments, the conversation would slowly shift in a direction that would test everyone's character. Because your heart needs this right now, because life's biggest lessons often begin inside the most ordinary moments. Your soulmate had no idea they were about to experience one. And listen to this. At first they simply listened. They weren't searching for attention. They weren't waiting for the perfect moment to speak. They weren't trying to impress anyone. Instead, they quietly observed. They listened carefully to every opinion, every comment, every assumption, every conclusion people were making. The more they listened, the more they realized something felt incomplete. Important details seemed to be missing. People were reaching conclusions without knowing the whole picture. And that feeling stayed with them. Because your heart needs this right now, because wisdom often begins by listening more than speaking. Your soulmate chose to listen first. And listen to this. As the discussion continued, the room became louder. Everyone wanted to contribute. Everyone believed they understood the situation. Everyone felt confident in what they were saying. Yet your soulmate noticed something different. Very few people were asking questions. Very few people were trying to understand. Most were simply reacting. And that realization quietly touched their heart. Because your heart needs this right now, because understanding begins when curiosity becomes stronger than judgment. Your soulmate understood that. And listen to this. For a brief moment they considered staying silent. It would have been easier. Nobody expected them to say anything. Nobody would have questioned their silence. Life would have continued exactly as before. But something inside them refused to stay quiet. Not because they wanted to argue. Not because they wanted to prove anyone wrong. But because fairness mattered. Because kindness mattered. Because respect mattered. Because your heart needs this right now, because sometimes our values speak louder than our fears. Your soulmate listened to those values. And listen to this. They waited patiently until everyone else had finished speaking. They didn't interrupt. They didn't raise their voice. They didn't criticize anyone. Instead, they calmly shared one simple thought. Maybe we don't know the entire story. The room became unexpectedly quiet. People stopped talking. Some looked surprised. Others simply listened. Because those few words carried something powerful. Not certainty. Not accusation. Humility. Because your heart needs this right now, because humility often opens doors that arguments never can. Your soulmate witnessed that truth. And listen to this. They continued speaking gently. They reminded everyone how easy it is to misunderstand someone when we only know part of the story. They reminded everyone that every person carries experiences invisible to everyone else. Hidden struggles. Private worries. Silent victories. Dreams no one else ever hears about. The room remained quiet. People started thinking instead of reacting. Because your heart needs this right now, because compassion often begins with remembering that every person is fighting battles we cannot see. Your soulmate believed that deeply. And listen to this. The atmosphere slowly changed. The conversation became calmer. People stopped speaking over one another. Instead of making assumptions, they started asking questions. Instead of criticizing, they became thoughtful. Instead of judging quickly, they became curious. It wasn't because your soulmate had all the answers. It was because they reminded everyone of something people easily forget. Kindness deserves a place in every conversation. Because your heart needs this right now, because one calm voice can often change an entire room. Your soulmate experienced that moment. And listen to this. As the discussion continued, they noticed something else. The conversation was no longer about proving who was right. It slowly became about understanding. And that difference meant everything. Because understanding creates peace, while assumptions create distance. Your soulmate quietly chose peace. Because your heart needs this right now, because the strongest people aren't always the loudest. Sometimes they're simply the calmest. Your soulmate discovered that strength. And listen to this. When everything finally ended, nobody applauded. Nobody made a dramatic announcement. Life simply continued. People moved on to other conversations. Other responsibilities. Other parts of their day. Yet your soulmate carried something invisible with them. A feeling. A quiet sense of peace. Not because they had changed everyone's opinion, but because they had remained true to themselves. Because your heart needs this right now, because the greatest reward for doing what's right is often the peace it leaves inside your own heart. Your soulmate felt that peace. And listen to this. Later that evening, while reflecting on the day, they replayed every moment in their mind. Not because they regretted speaking. Not because they wanted praise. But because they wanted to understand why that conversation still felt important. Slowly, the answer appeared. The moment wasn't important because of what was said. It was important because of what it represented. Integrity. Compassion. Respect. The courage to encourage fairness even when silence would have been easier. Because your heart needs this right now, because our smallest choices often reveal our greatest character. Your soulmate saw that clearly. And listen to this. Another realization quietly settled into their heart. Real care isn't always expressed through grand gestures. Sometimes it's revealed through simple decisions. Choosing respectful words. Giving someone the benefit of the doubt. Refusing to join unfair criticism. Encouraging understanding before judgment. Those small choices rarely make headlines. But they shape the kind of person we become. Because your heart needs this right now, because character is built one decision at a time. Your soulmate knew they had taken one small step toward becoming the person they hoped to be. And listen to this. As the night became quieter, one final thought remained. A thought they knew they would remember for a very long time. The thought was, I hope I never become someone who stays silent when kindness needs a voice. The moment those words settled into their heart, they smiled. Not because the world had changed overnight, but because they had acted according to the values they wanted to carry through life. And that quiet certainty brought them more happiness than recognition ever could. Because your heart needs this right now, because living with integrity creates a peace that no amount of approval can replace. Your soulmate experienced that peace. And this was only the beginning. The conversation may have ended. But the lesson it taught them was only beginning to unfold. Don't skip. Listen carefully. This message is for you, because after that unexpected conversation ended, your soulmate couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. Not because they wanted attention. Not because they expected praise. But because something about the moment felt important. Something about it stayed in their heart long after everyone else had moved on. And listen to this. At first, they questioned whether speaking up had been the right decision. They replayed every word in their mind. Every sentence. Every expression. Every reaction they noticed around them. They wondered if they had said enough. Or perhaps too much. Yet the more they reflected, the more peaceful they became. Because your heart needs this right now, because doing what feels right often brings quiet peace, even when it isn't easy. Your soulmate felt that peace growing. And listen to this. The conversation itself wasn't loud. There wasn't shouting. There wasn't anger. There wasn't unnecessary conflict. Instead, it was filled with opinions, assumptions, quick conclusions. The kind of discussion where people sometimes forget that every story has another side. Your soulmate noticed that immediately. Because your heart needs this right now, because understanding begins when someone chooses to listen before reacting. Your soulmate chose to listen first. And listen to this. As everyone continued speaking, they paid attention to something others overlooked. Not just the words, but the emotions behind the words. They noticed uncertainty, confusion, misunderstanding. And they realized that many opinions were being formed without the full picture. That realization stayed with them. Because your heart needs this right now, because compassion often begins when we recognize that we rarely know every detail of another person's story. Your soulmate remembered that lesson. And listen to this. For a brief moment, they considered staying silent. It would have been easier, safer, more comfortable. No one would have expected anything from them. No one would have questioned their silence. Yet something inside refused to let the moment pass. Not because they wanted to argue. Because they believed fairness deserved a voice. Because your heart needs this right now, because integrity sometimes asks us to speak gently instead of remaining comfortably silent. Your soulmate answered that call. And listen to this. When they finally spoke, they didn't interrupt anyone. They waited patiently. They chose their words carefully. Every sentence was thoughtful. Every idea was respectful. Every comment invited understanding instead of disagreement. Because your heart needs this right now, because respectful words often travel farther than angry ones. Your soulmate understood that. And listen to this. Instead of criticizing anyone, they simply reminded everyone of an important truth. That people are more complicated than first impressions. That every situation has context. That kindness should come before judgment whenever possible. The room became quieter. Not because anyone was forced to agree. Because everyone paused to think. Because your heart needs this right now, because thoughtful words encourage reflection more effectively than loud arguments. Your soulmate witnessed that change. And listen to this. As the conversation continued, something remarkable happened. People started asking different questions. Instead of assuming. Instead of criticizing. Instead of rushing toward conclusions. They became curious. They became more patient. They became more willing to consider another perspective. Because your heart needs this right now, because one calm voice can sometimes inspire many others to slow down and think more carefully. Your soulmate saw that happen. And listen to this. The discussion ended peacefully. Everyone eventually returned to their day. The conversation faded. Life continued moving forward. Yet your soulmate carried something away from that moment. A quiet realization. A realization more valuable than they expected. Because your heart needs this right now, because meaningful moments often leave invisible lessons behind. Your soulmate carried one with them. And listen to this. Later that evening, while reflecting quietly, another thought appeared. They realized courage doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes courage is simply choosing fairness when misunderstanding would be easier. Sometimes courage is choosing compassion instead of criticism. Sometimes courage is reminding people to be kind. Because your heart needs this right now, because true strength is often expressed through calmness rather than confrontation. Your soulmate admired that kind of strength. And listen to this. They also realized something else. Acts of kindness are often invisible. Many people never know who quietly spoke well of them. Many people never discover who offered understanding when others offered judgment. Many people never realize someone protected their reputation with a few thoughtful words. Yet those moments still matter. Because your heart needs this right now, because kindness does not lose its value simply because it happens quietly. Your soulmate believed that deeply. And listen to this. The memory continued returning throughout the day. Not because it was dramatic. Because it reminded them of the kind of person they wanted to become. Someone who chooses empathy. Someone who values fairness. Someone who remembers that every person deserves understanding before judgment. Because your heart needs this right now, because our smallest choices often reveal our deepest values. Your soulmate recognized those values. And listen to this. As the evening drew to a close, one final realization settled into their heart. A realization they knew they would remember for a very long time. The realization was: people may forget every detail of a conversation, but they rarely forget how someone made others feel. The moment that thought appeared, everything made sense. The conversation. The decision to speak. The quiet courage. The lasting peace. Because your heart needs this right now, because compassion creates memories that often outlive words themselves. Your soulmate understood that truth. And listen to this. Before going to sleep, they made one quiet promise to themselves. Whenever they had the opportunity to encourage fairness, they would choose it. Whenever they could replace judgment with understanding, they would try. Whenever kindness needed a voice, they hoped they would have the courage to offer one. Not for recognition. Not for applause. Simply because it was the right thing to do. Because your heart needs this right now, because the greatest acts of character are often the ones no one applauds. Your soulmate believed that with all their heart. Don't skip. Listen carefully. This message is for you, because after the conversation finally ended and everyone slowly returned to their normal routines, your soulmate couldn't stop replaying the moment in their mind. Not because they regretted speaking. Not because they were worried about what others thought. But because something inside them had quietly changed. A realization had settled into their heart. One they knew they would never forget. And listen to this. For a long time, they believed courage always looked dramatic. They imagined courage as grand speeches. Bold decisions. Life-changing moments. Yet that day taught them something completely different. Sometimes courage is simply choosing kindness when criticism feels easier. Sometimes courage is refusing to let misunderstandings grow. Sometimes courage is quietly standing for fairness without expecting recognition. Because your heart needs this right now, because true strength is often calm rather than loud. Your soulmate discovered that kind of strength. And listen to this. As they walked away from the conversation, they noticed something surprising. They didn't feel proud. They didn't feel victorious. Instead, they felt peaceful. A quiet peace that comes from knowing you acted according to your values. A peace that cannot be measured by applause or approval. A peace that only honesty can create. Because your heart needs this right now, because living according to your values often brings a deeper satisfaction than winning an argument. Your soulmate experienced that satisfaction. And listen to this. Later that evening, they found themselves thinking about all the people they had met throughout their life. Some had encouraged others. Some had criticized. Some had remained silent. And suddenly they realized something important. The people they admired most were rarely the loudest people in the room. They were the ones who made others feel respected. The ones who chose empathy. The ones who reminded people to be fair. Because your heart needs this right now, because kindness leaves a legacy that often lasts longer than impressive words. Your soulmate understood that truth. And listen to this. As memory after memory returned, another realization slowly appeared. Every meaningful relationship is built on trust. Not perfect agreement. Not perfect circumstances. Trust. The confidence that someone will choose honesty. The confidence that someone will choose respect. The confidence that someone will choose compassion even when it's inconvenient. Because your heart needs this right now, because trust grows from consistent actions, not dramatic promises. Your soulmate reflected deeply on that lesson. And listen to this. For a brief moment, they wondered what might have happened if they had stayed silent. Perhaps nothing would have changed. Perhaps the conversation would have ended the same way. Perhaps everyone would have forgotten it by the next morning. Yet deep inside, they knew silence would not have felt right. Because the issue wasn't about changing everyone's opinion. It was about remaining true to themselves. Because your heart needs this right now, because inner peace often comes from doing what aligns with your conscience. Your soulmate followed their conscience. And listen to this. The more they reflected, the more they appreciated something they had overlooked before. Every person carries unseen struggles. Every person has experiences that others never witness. Every person deserves the chance to be understood before being judged. That realization stayed with them long after the conversation ended. Because your heart needs this right now, because empathy begins when we remember that every story has chapters we cannot see. Your soulmate promised never to forget that. And listen to this. As night fell, they opened their journal and began writing down a few thoughts. Not to remember the debate. Not to remember who said what. But to remember the lesson. They wrote about fairness. About patience. About listening before speaking. About choosing words that heal instead of divide. Because your heart needs this right now, because writing down meaningful lessons often helps us carry them into the future. Your soulmate wanted this lesson to last. And listen to this. The more they wrote, the clearer everything became. Real character isn't revealed when life is easy. It's revealed during ordinary moments when nobody expects anything from us. When we quietly decide who we want to be. When we choose principles over convenience. When we choose understanding over assumption. Because your heart needs this right now, because our everyday choices shape the person we become. Your soulmate was shaping that person. And listen to this. Another thought quietly entered their mind. They realized that defending someone doesn't always require dramatic words. Sometimes it's as simple as reminding people to slow down before judging. Sometimes it's encouraging others to consider another perspective. Sometimes it's offering a little compassion where there was very little before. Those quiet actions can change an entire atmosphere. Because your heart needs this right now, because gentle wisdom often reaches hearts more effectively than harsh criticism. Your soulmate witnessed that firsthand. And listen to this. As the evening grew quieter, they smiled to themselves. Not because anyone thanked them. Not because anyone noticed. But because they knew they had stayed faithful to the kind of person they wanted to become. That quiet certainty meant everything. Because your heart needs this right now, because self-respect grows when our actions reflect our deepest values. Your soulmate felt that self-respect growing. And listen to this. Before going to bed, they made a promise to themselves. A promise they intended to keep for the rest of their life. They promised to choose kindness even when it wasn't popular. To choose patience even when conversations became difficult. To choose understanding even when assumptions seemed easier. To remember that every person deserves dignity. Because your heart needs this right now, because the promises we make to ourselves often become the foundation of our character. Your soulmate understood that deeply. And listen to this. As they closed their eyes, one final realization stayed with them. A realization they knew would guide future conversations, future relationships, and future decisions. The realization was: people may not always remember my exact words, but I hope they remember that I tried to bring kindness into the room. The moment that thought settled into their heart, they felt completely at peace. Not because life had become perfect, but because they knew they had acted with compassion. And sometimes, compassion is the greatest victory of all. Because your heart needs this right now, because the world often changes through quiet acts of integrity that no headlines ever celebrate. Your soulmate believed those quiet moments matter more than most people realize. Don't skip. Listen carefully. This message is for you, because after the conversation ended, after everyone had gone home, after the voices became quiet, after the moment had already passed, your soulmate found themselves thinking about it again. Not because they expected recognition. Not because they wanted anyone to know what they had done. But because the experience had changed something inside them. And listen to this. As they sat alone with their thoughts, they replayed every detail. The words people had spoken. The silence that followed. The moment they decided to speak. The calm feeling that arrived afterward. For the first time in a long while, they realized they had acted without worrying about approval. They simply followed what felt right. Because your heart needs this right now, because true character is revealed when we act according to our values instead of seeking praise. Your soulmate discovered that truth. And listen to this. The more they reflected, the more they realized something surprising. Kindness doesn't always change every opinion. Fairness doesn't always convince every person. Compassion doesn't always receive applause. Yet those things still matter. Because they shape the person we become. Because your heart needs this right now, because doing the right thing has value even when nobody notices. Your soulmate carried that lesson with them. And listen to this. As the evening grew quieter, they remembered something they had learned years ago. Someone once told them that every person carries a story the world cannot see. Hidden struggles. Private victories. Silent fears. Unspoken hopes. That memory returned at exactly the right moment. Because suddenly they understood why judging people too quickly never feels right. Because your heart needs this right now, because empathy begins when we remember how much we don't know about another person's journey. Your soulmate never forgot that wisdom. And listen to this. For a while, they wondered if speaking up had truly made a difference. Maybe it changed someone's perspective. Maybe it simply encouraged a moment of reflection. Maybe it only reminded one person to think more carefully. Whatever the outcome, they realized something important. Sometimes we never see the impact of our kindness. But that doesn't mean the impact isn't real. Because your heart needs this right now, because even small acts of compassion can create ripples far beyond what we witness. Your soulmate believed that deeply. And listen to this. Another realization quietly appeared. Life offers countless opportunities to choose between judgment and understanding. Between impatience and patience. Between criticism and encouragement. Every day presents those choices. Not in dramatic moments. In ordinary conversations. Ordinary decisions. Ordinary interactions. Because your heart needs this right now, because extraordinary character is built through ordinary choices repeated consistently. Your soulmate understood that. And listen to this. As they reflected further, they noticed that the experience had changed how they wanted to approach future conversations. They wanted to listen more carefully. They wanted to assume less. They wanted to ask questions before forming opinions. They wanted to remember that respect often begins with curiosity. Because your heart needs this right now, because listening with empathy creates stronger relationships than speaking with certainty alone. Your soulmate embraced that lesson. And listen to this. The conversation had ended hours ago. Yet its lesson continued growing. Not because of what was said. Because of what was learned. That kindness requires courage. That fairness requires patience. That understanding requires humility. Those 3 lessons became something they quietly carried forward. Because your heart needs this right now, because the lessons that stay with us are often more valuable than the events that teach them. Your soulmate treasured those lessons. And listen to this. Before going to sleep, they made one final promise. Not a promise anyone else would hear. Not a promise written for the world. A promise made quietly within their own heart. They promised to continue choosing compassion whenever possible. To defend fairness without seeking attention. To remember that every person deserves dignity. To become someone who leaves conversations better than they found them. Because your heart needs this right now, because the promises we make to ourselves often shape the rest of our lives. Your soulmate intended to keep that promise. And listen to this. As peace settled over the night, one final thought appeared. A thought so simple that it felt timeless. The strongest people are not always the loudest. Sometimes they are simply the ones who quietly choose kindness when kindness is needed most. Those words stayed with them. Because they realized strength isn't measured by volume. It's measured by integrity. Because your heart needs this right now, because genuine strength is often expressed through calm compassion rather than conflict. Your soulmate believed that with all their heart. And listen to this. The secret they never shared wasn't that they expected anything in return. It wasn't that they hoped anyone would praise them. It was simply this. They wanted to become the kind of person who protects respect, encourages understanding, and treats others with fairness, even when nobody is watching. That quiet goal became part of who they are. Because your heart needs this right now, because our greatest achievements are often invisible acts of integrity that shape our character. Your soulmate understood that. And listen to this. If there's one lasting message from this story, it's not that a hidden event definitely happened exactly as described. It's a reminder that real care is often shown through everyday choices, listening before judging, speaking with respect, and standing up for fairness when the opportunity arises. Those quiet moments may never make headlines, but they can leave a lasting mark on both the people around us and the person we become.